good to see you. And hello, everyone. Welcome to the Choose Happiness podcast. I am so thrilled to introduce my guest today. This is an extraordinary
Oh,
woman. She's not only a
no.
successful business owner, but she's also making the world a better place every day by helping people in need. It is my honor and pleasure to welcome, coming to us from Jenkintown, Pennsylvania, the wonderful, the talented, the illustrious
Oh
Ellen
God.
Rubin.
Gosh,
Yay!
I'm not really good with praise, but thank you.
It is so good to see you.
It's so good to see you too. And thank you for asking me to be on your podcast because um what a more perfect title uh to be speaking about. I can say so much on this topic.
Well, we're looking forward to hearing what you have to share. So, behind you is your beautiful store. It is called Love to Knit and More, and it is in Jenkintown, Pennsylvania. Oh, I'm already picking out. I want that pink, and I want that.
And if anybody doesn't know where Jenkintown is, it's not too far from Philly,
Perfect.
Northeast Philly,
Yes.
So it's a lot of people are like, "Where's Jenkintown?" Oh, Jenkintown has the notoriety of being known for a famous actor and stuff like that, and has a great movie uh, theater there.
Oh, that's right. But Love to Knit and More is also there. So that's also.
Yes, thank
Yes.
you.
So, can you please share your journey of becoming a successful business owner and how you turned your passion into a business?
Sure. So it was a very interesting journey. And for some reason, when I hear journey, because it's become a thing to talk about people's journey, I'm like, journey. Oh, yeah, I guess it really has been. We all think of our life, or at least I did that, I'd have a trajectory. I knew I wanted to get married. I knew I wanted to have kids, but that, it'd be kind of like, I'm a scientist. Okay. So I did immunology research. Love that. But if you would have told me 20 some years ago that I was going to be doing this for a living, I would have laughed. I would have been like, you got to be kidding. Like, no, I'm going to be doing bench research, trying to help do cancer research, ovarian cancer research. I wanted to help people. Um, did MS and asthma research, other cool stuff. I also reported safety information to the FDA for Merck. And my last job was at Fox Chase Cancer Center, where I worked with patients and did a lot of bench research, and I loved it. So I wouldn't have thought I would have taken this twist and turn in my life, but some pretty awful things happened in my life, and I uh, and it, all these different things came together. So it wasn't like one thing. It was I was running an enrichment program at an elementary school at night. I was teaching at four different knitting stores and weekends. And what did I see? And as a scientist, what did I observe? And just seeing how dramatically knitting and crochet, especially knitting, because that's really where I started my journey. Um, how it was helping people, but I didn't really realize it was helping myself. But so I was observing how it was helping people with stress and anxiety and depression. I had a dear friend who was going through cancer treatments. We would go to Penn and take the train there and sit when she was getting her infusions and sit there and knit
Mm.
every with me. And I would look being observant. When you're a scientist, you're taught to be very observant, and you can't just like stop doing that. And it was all those observations with all those different things, seeing how it was impacting kids, seeing how it was impacting people. 20 some years ago, I was saying, and what everybody was saying is this is meditative.
Mm.
But what I was noticing was it was far beyond meditative. It was profoundly transformative. For Cheryl, it was helping her take her out of always thinking about cancer all the time, and her children and what was going to happen. Or it was working with people that were dealing with pain and like major surgery, they couldn't, this person in particular couldn't watch TV or read because she had major scoliosis surgery, but she could knit. And I had always started my knitting classes saying it's exponential. If you teach somebody, then they teach somebody, you know. And later on, I would come to find out that same person who I taught with her daughter started her own program and impacted other people. And then one of the people that came to volunteer for me made a knitting bag for every person who went through it. And that person made, I think, close to 800 knitting bags.
Oh
So,
my
like, there
gosh.
was my proof of concept, like, because that's
Yes.
another science thing. And
Yes.
so this wasn't something that popped in overnight. It was something that kind of formed. And I said, I want to start a nonprofit. And I knew that to have a nonprofit, great, I could start a nonprofit, but how would people hear about it? And where would I get those people? So what I envisioned was there would be a nonprofit that would work with different groups of people. So like I could start a nonprofit, but how would anybody hear about it? And then there's also a lot of people that are retired, and my father was sort of in that same position, and other people. And I know, like, a lot of people want to know what to do with the rest of their life. And you know, studies have shown that you need to continue to do something even after you retire. You have a higher chance of mortality, dementia, blah blah blah. And so I thought, well, why not, you know, why not take retired individuals who have a lot of experience? Like I was brought up to really revere and cherish people that were older. I always was really fascinated and wanted to know more about people in their lives. So anyway, getting back on topic, um, I thought, well, I could have a store. I would be able to talk to people, and that was my pitch. Like, hey, starting. I have this store, and I'm starting a nonprofit. And I actually started doing the nonprofit work before I applied for the nonprofit. Again, sort of a proof of concept. Like, I think this is a great idea, but maybe nobody else does.
Mm,
So, and I did find there was a need. I
mm,
was working at our local hospital, working with maternity patients on long-term bed rest. Then after I opened the store, I found a lot of journal articles, and one of them was oncology nurses to prevent compassion fatigue, that they were doing a knitting intervention or knitting. So I then started working with nurses, and so it goes on and on. So I've worked with a huge population of people now. I also postulated that it would help people with autism. It wasn't a far stretch because people that have autism have comorbidities of stress and anxiety. So anyway, so that's, so did, I don't know if I really answered the question. What compelled me was seeing that there was a need,
mm.
loving my job, but knowing that I could help more people, and almost being forced, but not forced, saying, you know um, what truly happened is I lost a number of dear people in my life, and I was still pretty young. And some other bad stuff happened that I needed to get divorced. There was no question I had to get divorced.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happened, I had the opportunity with a suggestion of a family member to do what I had always said I wanted to do. And I slept on it for a good 2.5 months
Mm.
because I was pretty scared. Financially supporting myself with 3 kids when I was having a lot of difficulty was a big risk. But one day I woke up very clear as day after Cheryl had passed. And it was, I don't know if I dreamt of it or thought of it, but it was so clear that I did not want to be on my deathbed saying I had this really great idea, but I was too scared to do it.
Mm.
And that was the motivation behind doing it, because I said, you know what, at least if I fail, then I'll know that I failed trying doing something that, you know, I wouldn't have that regret.
Yes.
Um, and that was that was the huge motivator in doing it. And I loved doing cancer research.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a geek. I'm still a geek. I still love sciencey stuff.
Yeah.
you'll see me watching all the nature programs and this and that. No reality TV for me.
Right.
If you want reality TV, as my one friend said, Ellen, if you wrote a book, nobody would believe it. So,
Right. Exactly.
seriously, I was like, yeah, you're right. This could be a great
Wow.
movie.
I am so inspired by you because it wasn't like you were in this career that I hated my career, I had to make a change. You were like, I love this career, but I want to do this too. And that's huge.
Absolutely.
Because I think sometimes we can pigeonhole ourselves into saying, I'm a scientist and this is who I
Yep.
am and what I do, we just do it forever. But there is so much to be gleaned from life and different experiences. And what I heard you say about you always wanted to be married, I would imagine that thinking, okay, now I have to get divorced. Then what's my identity? And you were able to just really reinvent yourself to something. It's still you, but it's a brand new you, which I love to see and love to hear about. Wow.
Thank you. And actually, it was part of it started when I was in high school. I was an art major and a bio major. I loved AP biology. I hated beginning intro bio. If you would have told me then I was going to become a scientist in ninth grade, I would have been like, what? But and my joke, which is the truth, in some respects, is I chose to be a scientist because I didn't want to be a poor starving artist, and I really went full circle because from being a scientist, I went to work for a nonprofit where Fox Chase Cancer Center is a nonprofit, so I was getting paid less money than when I graduated from college because I was working on co-ops and stuff like that at Drexel. So I became a full poor starving scientist, and then I went to being a poor starving artist. So like so God laughs.
Yeah, exactly.
But you got to
Right.
follow your passion. You know.
And it's true that life really is too short not to. And if I may comment on the gorgeous scarf you're wearing, you did make that, yes? How long
I
did that take you? A long time or?
I would say it did take me a long time in between trying to raise three kids, run a store. I actually was working part-time and running a store at a period of time and juggling a lot of stuff. I don't ever really get a huge chunk of time just to sit and do something. Maybe I stay up way too late. I wake up way too early. But it probably took me a couple of months
Mm,
and I will take this off now, I think, because it is a little bit warm
okay.
in here. Um, this is a self-fringing shawl, so you knit it in this direction, and then you take apart the last four stitches, and it becomes this fringe. And so it's really cool. And I like to wear it this way, as opposed to having it, with the triangle in the back. I think it looks very pretty. But thank you.
It's gorgeous. I'm very impressed. Someone who does not have your skills, I am extremely, extremely impressed.
Well, you can have my skills too, because let me tell you, this is people say to you, how did you get, to be so good? Well, one thing is I made a lot of mistakes, right? I had to become comfortable with making a lot of mistakes and, just being persistent and tenacious. And that really applies to life too.
Hmm. That is so true because it's funny. You see people knitting, and I'm like, but they're also counting. It's not, you know what I mean? Like, that's
Well,
not like,
actually, a lot of times you don't have to count. That's a kind of a misnomer. Like,
oh,
because if you put locking stitch markers to identify where you're going to do an increase or a decrease or something like that, you may just be knitting along and not counting. Most of the time, you don't have to count. Or I have tips and tricks so people, again, they'll say, I teach how to correct knitting mistakes, and I rip something off and I pull it out and put it on. They're like, and I'm like, don't worry about it. I can fix it. And I had to learn to be okay with making mistakes because I really wasn't in the beginning. I'm
mm.
not a perfectionist. If you saw my office or certain other places, but I used to not be able to go to bed until I fixed that mistake. And then I had to be like, you know what? It's okay. Or occasionally to leave that mistake in because, hey, one piece that I'm working on right now, I was in New York. I was working and I was in a cab going out to dinner and I said, well, if I make a mistake, I'm just going to leave it in. And I can point to that and say, I was in a cab in New York right here.
I love that because it tells the story. Oh, that's
Exactly.
fantastic. Wow. So, I'm going to read the mission from your website, which I just
Sure.
think is so beautiful. The mission of Love to Knit and More is to help others learn the therapeutic arts of knitting, crochet, and other fiber medias, and to encourage the building of communities through the meditative qualities of these fiber arts. I love this
Oh,
so much.
thank
And
you.
oh no, it's
Thank you.
beautiful. So
Thank
could
you.
you tell us kind of what you've learned specifically about the beneficial effects of
Sure.
working with their hands? And
Sure.
people of all ages, all backgrounds. Yeah, I'd love to hear about
Yep.
that.
Yep. So the benefits are just ridiculously enormous. So, like I said, people weren't really writing about it. Nowadays, there's a lot of news articles about it all the time, but I was almost screaming from my platform or the inside of where I was, my small 300 square foot store, not really screaming, but people, there was glass windows and people come out after eating. I'd say, and they'd be like, what is this doing here? And because it's like a burst of color. And then I'd say, hi, I teach for the therapeutic benefit. It helps with stress. It became my elevator pitch. I learned
Oh,
that's what it is, you know?
hmm.
Um, so I was seeing, I was seeing that it was, like I said earlier, helping with all these different things. And fundamentally, what I believe, and if there's any scientists out there that would like to do this study, I would love the study to be done. But I've seen other supporting articles which basically show that it helps your brain. Your brain produces dopamine and serotonin. You are doing a repetitive activity. You get into this flow state, just like any other art where you can get into a flow state. You lose track of time when eventually I say, because I always tell all my students that you're going to be frustrated for a really long time. You're going to make mistakes, but eventually you'll get to this flow state where your hands are moving, but you're not thinking about what you're doing. So sometimes I hear that people, and even myself, people would frown upon being in a conversation, or that I know of some physicians that will be in a meeting and knitting, and other people look down on that. But you actually can concentrate better. And if it's no surprise to you, based on our interview so far, I was formally diagnosed as having ADD. And
Mm.
I did know that I struggled with something when I was in elementary school, middle school, high school, college. I had to study like a fiend and take notes and notes of my notes and highlight to do well. Um, and as a side, I always say that I teach and learned knitting like I studied organic chemistry. But in any case, getting back to that subject, um, you know, when I came up with this idea for this nonprofit and store, I had this, what I envisioned was creating this community because, as I said earlier, nobody gets through life unscathed. I believe, and just like sort of every fiber of my being, haha, was leading me down this path,
Mm.
that we're here to support one another in this thing called life.
Mm.
And that um, just like maybe a hairdresser or somebody else, people tend to open up and talk about things. And with some people, I'm pretty forthcoming with the things that happened to me, because trauma is really difficult, abuse is really difficult. And to know that you're not the only one out there, and that these communities are there to support one another. So when my idea for the store came up, I was also saying, okay, now I want to get to know a little bit about these people. And then, hey, if they're going to have surgery, put it on my calendar, call them up, say, hey, how are you? What's going on? Do you need anything? Or part of, like with the nonprofit, was, say, a retired social worker. What I envisioned was a retired social working with, some, maybe that's somebody that's housebound, that they would go to that person's house
Mm.
and help them and say, hey, I see that you need this, and they get them in contact. So maybe someone who's retired maybe wants to put in one day a week doing this, and how transformative that can be. So the building of communities in the store, but also the nonprofit. And they are two very separate entities, but by people supporting the store, they support the nonprofit. And I think of them like working hand in hand, like
Absolutely.
enmeshed. So I started working with people here at the store that had physical difficulties, mental issues, autism, so that I was able to prove how it was helpful to them. People that had autism would stop rocking. And I hear, yeah, that was my first person. In fact, what happened was one of those times when I went out in the hallway, someone that said from Outback, I would say it helps with this and this, but I think it'll help people with autism. Turns out that person was a therapist and directed his patient to come see me. She saw me for several years, and I went to her house during COVID, sat outside in the cold in a screened-in porch.
Yeah.
I was desperate during COVID. I was
Yeah.
so desperate. I was, being an immunologist was convenient because then I was able to grocery shop for people, put a little tripod, sit outside at Trader Joe's and sit there and knit, put it over my shoulder and go grocery shopping for people that were immunocompromised. And they could rest assured that I knew sterile technique and was being very careful. But
Wow.
so that's again going off on a tangent, but the beneficial effects weren't 20 some years ago being talked about, but I was just like, oh my God, this is crazy how much it's helping people. And there was just this yearning for helping people. And with the bad situation that happened to me, I was able to pivot, but it wasn't an easy pivot. I had to really scrape myself off of the floor and being curled up in a ball in bed, if I'm being totally honest, which, you know what, when people say to me and come in and tell me something, I'll, someone will look at me and say, I say, well, guess what? I can relate to you. And I think people like to hear that, I'm a little bit more judicious. I had to learn a lot of things about life before I would, share things with people. So,
Sure.
but I'm so glad that you really love that mission because that is like, whereas other stores are for profit and we are for profit theoretically. I'm trying to, we still, I'm building up at the core of the store. I really need to get the word out about what we do. I mean, Tuesdays I work with someone once a week religiously, unless they're sick or something. On such and such day, I do this. On Monday afternoons, I volunteer in Philadelphia with my good friend Toya, who has grandparents for literacy. I have to give a little plug for that. And
Please, yeah.
we are Therapeutic CraftCare, and the two of us, because I would always say to her, I want to be teaching the Philadelphia School District. I said, kids need this. This was before the pandemic. Like, kids these days, it wasn't easy for us growing up as kids, but it is so much harder now.
Yeah.
And the digital stuff and all these other things. So anyway, that was a motivation. So sorry to go off on so many tangents. I hope you can follow me.
Of course, and you're fascinating. And I think you're so right that when kids can do something tactile, not just on the phone, I kind of picture like all
Yeah.
of the synapses, like a pinball machine, going off in their head.
So funny that you should mention that. So one of the programs I did, I worked with another good friend of mine, Tori. We went down to University of Pennsylvania. They caught wind of what we were doing. It was the tail end of the pandemic. And we taught kids who had hemiparesis due to cerebral palsy, which basically means their mother had a stroke in utero and they were somewhat paralyzed on one side of their body. They wanted these kids to do a bimanual activity. So again, that was another thing, was like, wait a second, these bimanual activities are help connecting both sides of your brain. So maybe you're right-handed, but you have to really force yourself to do even knitting and crochet. So I fundamentally believe that, here's getting back to something I said earlier, that if we had a functional MRI done of somebody's brain, a child, adults who had never done it before, and looked at it over time, you would see that there's different connections and different things. And I saw that over time, myself and by observing other people I work with, that their brain is changing in some fundamental way. Like the autistic person who would stop rocking, she said to me, "I can't wait to tell my therapist how much better I feel." And that's pretty profound.
Yeah.
And working with somebody here who was missing her left hand due to a congenital deformity,
Hmm.
who was a lovely, shy lady when she walked in and would walk in with a big oversized sweatshirt like this. And I acted like there wasn't anything wrong with her. I was like, okay, you want to learn how to knit? You want to learn how to crochet? I'm going to teach you, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, and that was here at the store. So, it's building this community. That's the bigger point of life,
Mm-hmm.
making this world a better place because we have a limited amount of time here.
Mm-hmm.
I lost a friend when she was 28 due to a car accident. My friend Cheryl, another friend John, to skin cancer,
Mm.
blah, blah. And you say, okay, well, what's important? Yeah, I need to make a living, right? I
Yeah.
need to make a living. I need to feed myself.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, I had also worked for a man who was very, very wealthy,
Mm.
houses all over the world. But you could tell that he was incredibly sad and lonely.
Wow.
And, you know, that that was very telling to me too,
Mm-hmm.
because money just, you can be financially wealthy, but pretty sad inside. Um, and that's sad.
Yeah.
So I may not be not financially wealthy, but I am so wealthy. I am so happy. And I believe that all this terrible stuff that happened to me was I needed to learn from it. So anytime something bad happens in my life, after I deal with the aftermath, and I deal with it better each successive time, I say to myself, okay, what did I learn from this?
Mm.
So I know that was going off in huge tangents. I hope you're okay with that.
Of
Um,
course. You are so inspirational because when I think about you curled up in the fetal position in your bed, I mean, God forbid you could still be there, but you're not. Look where you are, and look how you
yeah,
turned your personal, if you will, tragedy into being such a giving, helping person. Because
yeah,
I'll tell you, that could also turn someone bitter, and it could turn someone to say, I am just going to do what's right for me, and everybody
yeah,
else doesn't matter. But you
yeah,
took that, I think, because you started off with a very giving heart, but then just
yeah,
like the Grinch, not that you were the Grinch, but like it just expanded and expanded, you know what I
yeah,
mean? And that is so inspirational. I
yeah.
mean,
There were a lot of naysayers. In fact, I had gone
mm,
with my ex-husband at a time to a new facility that was a new building. The Yorktown was raised and rebuilt, and went there and had thought about renting a space there. And these two men were like, no, this is no. And I was just like, and I had been so supportive of my ex-husband and all his different endeavors. So,
mm,
I had to listen to what was inside my heart
mm.
and just keep working and working and working and following my path. And like I said, I really didn't know if I'd still be in business, but at least I had tried.
Absolutely. And that's so important too, because I've had a lot of naysayers as well. And to be able to turn that off and say, no, I know this is right for me, regardless of what you say, it's kind of like what life comes down to. Because and also what you were saying about the money, we are sold this story of you have to be rich and you have to have this car and this house and this, and that, on paper looks fantastic. But then you look at the reality when I lie my head down at night, well, what was fulfilling for me today? Was it the car that's sitting in my garage? What's fulfilling about that? So
Yeah.
that's also external. And so,
Yeah.
wow,
It- it-
yeah.
I've, like I said, I look, what did I learn from this?
Mm,
I have some other people in my life that I've tried to one friend in particular, gets really stuck with what happened to her and how she always gets this happens. And I say, listen, you gotta just move on. Like, and for a while I was stuck. I was stuck,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but you just have to say, you know what? And actually, this is what I did say to myself. A, nobody was going to treat me like shit again.
Amen,
B,
sister. Yeah.
B, what was the B? No one was going to treat me like shit again. And that the second half of my life was going to be really good. And I also have to credit having a really, really good therapist the first time. I got a recommendation. I could have been bouncing from therapist to therapist.
Mm-hmm.
I found somebody who said, Ellen, do you realize that this is happening? And da 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 da. And so and so's not going to change. And it's going to happen again. And I wanted to leave no stone unturned before I finally said, that's it. I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done. I'm not taking
Mhm.
this anymore.
Wow. That's so good to hear because I also think with therapy, people will give up if the first person they choose isn't a good fit. And
Yeah.
that's a mistake because I feel like there really is someone out there for everyone. You just may have to kiss a few
Yeah.
frogs first. You know,
No,
that's a
that's just like I have a really great partner out there, and there were definitely some frogs.
right, exactly. So, do you have advice for? I mean, you started this business, you said your first one was in 300 square feet, and now you've got this gorgeous big space. If someone wants to open their own business or do something like that with their passion, maybe that wasn't their college degree, what's your advice for someone who might be afraid to take that step?
Well, I would first of all fully investigate it. Now, I had worked it at these other knitting stores, so I also went in with
Mhm.
very wide open. Like, I knew at the time that knitting and crochet was cyclical. I knew that it was very hard to make a living. I knew, but I had a different mission.
Mhm.
So my advice would be to thoroughly research what you want to do.
Mhm.
More recently, after I started, I got a mentor, and a lot of people don't know about. I work with a great guy, Bill, and he is my mentor, and he has helped me through some rough patches. I would also recommend like seeing what else is out there in the vicinity. When I opened, a lot of knitting stores were closing, and there weren't. We've been open for 8 years,
Mm.
so there wasn't much competition.
Mhm.
But what I now look at it as, and actually never saw it as competition because there's a lot of places that have opened up, that we can all work together.
Mm.
We can all be successful. There's
Mhm.
the Greater Philadelphia Yarn Crawl that's coming up.
Mm.
And we all have a different niche. We're in different places and stuff like that. So my advice would be to really, you can't have it just, it can't be for money
Mhm.
in the beginning for sure. It'd be really helpful if you have a partner that not financially supports you, but supports you in what your goal is.
Mhm.
Because they're like those, there'll be naysayers,
Mhm.
and there were definitely those naysayers even that I had dated, not
Mm.
believing or seeing how hard that you have to work. So my
Yeah.
advice would be to just think about it and get advice. Like one thing I did was I used to fly out to California a lot. I met with Jennifer Knits. Jennifer, thank you.
Mm.
I spent a lot of time with her. She shared some valuable information with me
Mhm.
and helped me a little bit get started. So, talk to other people.
Mm.
Really find you have to have more than a love of something. I didn't need yarn, when I started. It wasn't because I wanted yarn, and
Yeah.
it was because I had a different drive, a different purpose.
That is excellent advice. And it's funny. I think it is hard to put ourselves out there if we have this dream because we don't want the naysayers. But the more we put it out there and the more advice we get from other people, the kind of the bigger it gets, and then the spark gets ignited even more, and the flame can of passion, can grow a little bit more. And I also think it's really important that if someone came to you, you could say, "Here's what not to do." Like no one needs to reinvent the wheel. It's like,
Oh
the
my gosh. So
yeah,
many
like the
things that I learned not to do,
right,
right?
and
Like
that's
trust your gut
yeah,
too. Really
hmm
trust your gut. That goes for all of life.
hmm
Um, and I am sorry, it's really bugging me that that thing.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Um, score, score,
Oh, okay.
score, the score mentor.
Mm,
They have locations all over, not
okay.
just in the Philadelphia or area. Um, so trust your gut.
hmm
Trust your gut.
Yeah.
And Bill, as my score mentor, he's a retired business professional. He has been just such a
Mm.
wonderful mentor. And, so trust your gut.
That's beautiful. Thank you. I know that you work a ton, and that's the thing of owning your own business. But what do you love about being your own boss and getting to pick the yarn that you want in the store, etc.?
Well, that's actually a really hard thing to do.
Is it?
Yeah, because so I gravitate to certain yarns or certain colors, and you have to think outside of the box.
Hmm.
So, what do I like about being my own boss? Well, what I love is I love working with people.
Mm.
I love working with kids, the light bulb that comes off, the sheer joy, like how that can take somebody on a different path on life themselves.
Hmm.
And like I said, with that exponential, this it's really not it's hard to say for somebody. There are process and there's product knitters and crocheters or
Mm.
needle felters or sewers or quilters. um, for me it's more of the process for these kids, or when I worked with foster kids in Philly, the feeling, maybe this has been their first time that they really felt like, wow, look what I did, and they're so proud of themselves. And
Wow.
maybe someone, they haven't been in an environment where someone says, I believe in you. I also mentored this young woman who I even spoke with yesterday. um, First was it was about the knitting, but then it was about life and dealing with stuff, like how you can fundamentally, work with someone and change their life, and know that you believe in them even though they may have a sucky situation. I
Hmm.
know you and I were blessed with good parents,
Hmm.
really good parents. Not everybody is.
Mm.
um, I recently lost my dad, and you
Oh,
know
sorry.
you not everybody is.
Hmm.
So, like, you have to think outside of the box, and you can really change another person's life for the better.
Absolutely. Wow. I am so thrilled that that's your mission, because that also has ripple effects. Because with that, the kid that nobody believed in, he or she might not have had a great
Hmm.
path, but then you put them on this great path of
Yeah,
having confidence. Look what I made. And the next day is going to be better. And then the next day, that is so beautiful.
I have to tell you another story. So
Yeah.
Toy and I worked with this couple different classes, and of autistic kids, and there's all different ranges of levels of needs for them. Either they have high needs or lower needs. Last year, I worked with a young man who was nonverbal, and I I taught him how to crochet, only to find out. And then I always say to them, "Is it okay if I touch you? Can I hold your hands and this and that?" Only come to find out that he doesn't usually didn't like to be didn't like to be touched. And then later, towards the end of the year, he I was working with him and saying some things, and he just started giggling, and I'm like, "What's so funny?" It was actually that he was just so darn happy And he was
Wow.
giggling. I have video of that, and I really
Oh,
want to reconnect with him. He moved off to high school, and then
oh.
this year I was working with another nonverbal person, and that young lady, she did not want to work with me last year. And I really feel people out, intuitive and stuff. So
Mm.
I'm working with her. So, and she says to me, she literally said to me this time, and she was more interested. She wasn't in the beginning. We gave them hats around Christmas, and she pointed to a hat that we gave her, and she said the word hat. And I said, I was working with, I said, "Do you want to make a hat with this yarn?" And she goes, "Yes." I'm like, "Okay, let's do it." So like, and then you find out that she keeps asking for you. I want to work with you, So like, I feel like, and this will come as no surprise to you, that I'm juggling, right, in my
Yes.
life. And I always wanted to be a clown when I grew up. If you ever would have asked me as a kid, I actually did get to work as a clown in high school and in college a little bit.
Oh,
But you feel like this, you're juggling, and
yeah.
what can I do? So,
Mhm.
so thank you so much for this time and talking with me, and also being able to deal with my tangents.
Of
If people
course.
who know me know that I get so excited and passionate about what we do here and
Yes.
with the nonprofit,
Hmm.
that I just radiate exuberance and joy, and it's hard to contain. And then I get off on tangents, and I'm
I'm
not.
so, no, do not contain. I'm so happy. And I also love that the average lay person would think, what does knitting have to do with someone who's nonverbal? Number one. And it's like it can open doors. And the other thing that I love is that you were like, I'm gonna try. I'm gonna do it. Who knows
Yeah.
what could happen? And then you had this amazing success. So that's
Mhm.
another thing to learn. Like just if you see someone who they might be alone, talk to them. Just try. It may work,
Yeah.
it may not, but just go for it. I
It,
love that.
it might be hard to believe, but I was fairly shy a lot of my life, and was very concerned what people were thinking or whatever. So now, and like I said, I used to fly to California a lot, so I would sit there and knit, and then a little girl look at me and I said, "You want to learn?"
Wow.
Yeah. And so she'd ask her parents. I'm like, "Okay, well, ask your parents," and then sit with them. So I'm not shy
Wow.
anymore. Maybe
That's
about certain things.
wonderful. Good. I'm glad. Well, obviously, you love working with your hands, but do you have anything else to share about how you choose happiness in your own life?
Well, oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm not all one faceted. I, although I focus a lot of my life in this area, I love to do outdoors things. I love to bicycle. Um, I, I mean, really love to bicycle. I've had a lot less time to do stuff. I've had to prioritize. The last couple of years, I've tried to prioritize myself a little bit more. I
Mhm.
love to go hiking outdoors. I love to travel. I've gone with my partner to Portugal and Spain last year, and we hiked the Pyrenees. I love to read. Um, I've learned a lot
Mhm.
from some really good authors and books. There's not as much time. Um, what else do I love to do? Gosh, I love still reading scientific journal articles, or watching the science shows, or just sitting in front of a fireplace and
Mhm.
having some peace in my life. I love spending time with my kids, and that hasn't always been easy. There were huge rough patches there, but and especially time, and it was very important for me to spend time with my father,
Mm.
as he was sick, and going to rehab, and being there for him, and now for my mother. That's hugely important.
Mhm.
Friends and family, and making the world a better place are at the heart of things.
Mm.
So yes, I do have other things that I love to do. Going for a walk.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, thank you.
And thank you for sharing that because I think people might look at you and say, she's got this successful business. She works 6.5 days a week. That's all she does. But what I love to hear is even though you are a successful businesswoman, you also make sure to make time for friends and family. And that's so important. It's not just all about, well, I know it isn't about the bottom line for you anyway, but I think we can get caught up in I have to make sure that everything is perfect and the business has to be perfect and this, but it's like, but it's fine. You can take that half a day off or whatever it is and go be with your family. That's
I'm
important.
trying to work to a little bit. Have hired a really great store manager. I have another assistant manager.
Mhm.
And this goes without saying, I should have said this earlier. We have a ton of really, really great volunteers that
Oh,
understand the mission and
mm,
understand and help this be a success. Without the volunteers, this wouldn't have been possible. They are the best, the best. They give freely of their time and just really are just wonderful people in themselves.
how may I ask, how'd you get your volunteers? How were you able to get them?
Just by asking.
Mm,
I asked a lot of people. I had to get over my fear of asking. I asked a lot of people, and I never ever expect anything. One thing I've always taught my kids: do something because you want to do it.
hmm
Don't ever expect anything in return. So
hmm
I live my life that way. So I would just ask people, "Hey," and I love asking people what they do for a living. I worked with Dr. Constant Clayton, who, if you're from Philly, was a huge figure.
hmm
And, I didn't ask her for help because at that time she was in her late 80s.
hmm
But, I just asked. So if somebody says no, and I've had to learn to try to say no a little bit more, not take on a little bit too much, which I tend to do.
Yeah, don't we all? I love that advice so much of just ask. Just ask. Because,
Yeah. So they may say no. Okay.
yeah, you ask somebody else. That is so wonderful because I know I'm like, oh, I'm scared to ask and I don't want to be a burden. And then it's just ask. Just ask. What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's extraordinary. Okay, I have one last question. This one's for
Yes.
me.
Okay.
So, what advice do you
Ooh,
have for
ooh. I'm sorry. You know what? I had on the right. Okay. What advice do I have for you?
this is for me.
Okay.
So, if someone really wants to knit and crochet, but might be disappointed by some failures they've had in the past, what should we do to get started again, or to get started from a point of zero? I've always wanted to do this, how to begin.
Well, that's a really, really good question. People ask me that all the time. They'll say, "Oh, I tried to learn as a kid," or I say, well, first of all, not everybody is good at teaching, and I personally, I had to really work at it. So don't give up.
hmm
Try to find that right instructor, because one of the things I didn't learn as a kid, I learned as an adult. So I had to learn different tips and tricks to remember things. So keep at it.
hmm
Know that you're going to make mistakes. Be okay with making those mistakes. Know that one day you'll be able to fix them. Like when I taught my correcting mistakes class, I had to finally learn how to make the mistakes again and teach it. That was like, oh my God, I finally learned how to fix these things. And now I got to figure out how I made the mistake. That was just really funny.
It's really funny.
Just keep at it.
Yeah.
It's just like anything. Like with kids, I'll say to them, did you learn how to ride a bike the first time you got on it? Very few people say that they did,
Yeah.
right? You
Yeah.
got to be tenacious, persistent. And if somebody says, I have two left hands, you can't teach me. I said, if you want to learn, I can teach you. I teach
Mm.
left-handed people how to crochet. I'm right-handed. I teach left-handed people how to crochet and how to knit. If you want to do it, you can be taught. Know that you can learn.
hmm
Even Zoom lessons, I had to do that during the pandemic.
Oh,
If you
sure.
have that desire, and you work on harder and harder things. That's what I did with myself. I said, okay, I want to learn how to make buttonholes. So I'm going to work on a pillowcase with buttonholes instead of starting a sweater.
Mm-hmm.
Or I have had some students who on their third lesson say, okay, I want to make a sweater. I'm like, okay, let's start it, because I can start with a really easy sweater. I know, so
Yeah.
you can do it. I'd like to know that if you give up, and it's okay to say,
Yeah.
this isn't right for me, I don't
hmm
like it, And I, it's not right for everybody, but know that if you really want to do it, you can do it. It's
That,
not going to come to
yes,
you overnight.
yes.
I,
And
I
I
call this, I'm sorry to interrupt
go,
you.
go, go,
I
go.
call it the Amazon effect. Sorry, Jeff, but Bezos. Like, people expect that, boom, I want to do this. I'm going to get it. I'm going to get it the next day,
Hmm.
but no, you have to literally wait for your brain to make new connections. I see it with people
Mm.
that their fine motor skills get better. We all know nerves take a long time to grow, so you can do it. That's
Yeah,
what I say.
thank you. Well, and I love that when someone says, "Oh, I can't do this," you respond with, "If you really want to, you can learn how to do it." That's so key because it's so easy to fall back on an excuse or whatever. So, thank you. All right, I'm going to take that with me. Before I let you go and open your store, tell everybody where we can find Love to Knit and More and Therapeutic and TCC,
Yep,
Therapeutic
therapeutic
Care
craft
Center.
care. So you can
Yes.
find us on love2knitandmore.com. So the
Mhm.
name of the store has an ampersand. This was before, still not really computer great, but you have to type an and, love to knit, and it's LUV, the
Okay.
number two, knit, andmore.com. So
Mhm.
that's our store. Website, it's maybe not the best. It's improving that site. And our nonprofit, would you believe I had to write this down to make sure I got it right? Because it's tcc.org.
Okay. And you are accepting donations, correct?
Have a donation button. Yes, we are accepting donations, and that goes to fund all the nonprofit work that we do, which is a lot. It's a lot, and I hope to grow it more.
Mhm.
I'm hoping at some point I get another mentor, somebody that believes and that we can grow this concept to encompass and help more people.
What a wonderful mission. I could talk to you all day. I learned so much from you. I loved spending this time with you. And
Thank
everybody,
you.
check out the websites. We'll have a card at the end. Donate to TCC. And just, you've inspired me. You are wonderful. And I'm just so grateful for you and the time we had together. Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much,
Mwah.
Rachel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.